Eve to me is not a game of skills. It's a game of information. It is how much information can I collect and how can I use that information to shove it down your throat, pretty much, if that makes sense. You have things like Z-Kill. I can find a fleet doctrine. I can also, even solo, people are creatures of habit. So generally, if you like to fly a Hecate, you're going to fly the same fit. So all I have to do is find 3 to 4 losses of that Hecate, and I know your fit, so I can pretty much judge based on if I'm going to drop on you or not based on that. So I think the graph tool is probably one of the most important things as an FC.
So I don't know how much background you were given. We've been, until recently, struggling with an attack on our nullsec campus, which has not happened to us in a couple of years, which has led to a bunch of people getting a new interest in FCing, and it's led to a bunch of people who used to basically be crabbers or industrialists deciding they want to learn PvPing. So we've got a lot of people trying to learn PvP, and with a lot of people trying to learn how to FC, all very fast. And we're all trying to figure out how to do this because the Uni's existing PvP program is sort of set up for small group one-on-one mentorship, not large groups of people showing up all at the same time. So any suggestions you would give would be helpful.
That's kind of I always call this a 42 answer, what is the answer of life 42? It always depends. Eve is always a game that, it depends. Personally, how Goonswarm does it, obviously, we have a little bit different of budget here. We just tell people, go take fleets, go take fleets, go take fleets. So your 15 to 25 man Caracal realms are super important because it gets your FCs out there and all that, and actually learning how to communicate with their fleet, how to actually talk with the fleet. Because I'm sure when you guys had your first fleet, I know it was definitely a case for me. I was super awkward. I was I don't know what the hell to tell these people. So that's one way to go about it. CC. I think CC is a great tool as well. You can just get 2 FCs that you have, get 50 people, 25 and 25 in each fleet, and just have them brawl each other.
How does your FC team program work? How have you structured it? How do people go, from down to up, if you know what I mean?
So KarmaFleet specifically, I have it structured, it's pretty much just volunteer. So if you want to go learn to FC, you're just going to be pinging it to KarmaFleet only. We have the ability to do so since KarmaFleet's actually the biggest corporation in the Goonswarm Federation. So if they want to go take out, Hecate room, whatever, go do it. We'll ping it out, and they get to go do it and learn. And then we also have a incentive program. So essentially, for every fleet you take, you get a participation link. And at the end of the month, the top 10 with contributors to monthly fleets. So let's say, number 1 has whatever, and all the way through, I add them all up, and then I split all of their fleets into participation percentage, and then they get a payout depending on that. And of course, in order to be qualified to even receive payout for your PAPs, you have to do an after action report, which I actually think is another one of those super, super valuable things is an FC. It pretty much, I think you guys know what AARs are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, I can't tell you how many times that I sat down, thought about something afterwards. I'm man, I should have just done this. And then I'm thinking about it for the next 4 weeks because I'm mad at myself because it was just such a simple answer.
How do you handle AARs? Do you make them publicly available to everyone to comment on? Do you have them only available to people in your FC program? Curious what you do with them.
Ours are actually public, so we actually have a specific part of the forums where it's AARs.
Who comments on them?
Anyone.
who comments on them as a priority, if you know what I mean. Like anyone can, but you don't care about everyone, right? So who normally should comment on them? Not sure I'm phrasing this very well, but I hope you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And Troy, I also didn't forget your question. Don't worry. So it's hard to like explain, right? I think one of the greatest like advice that I ever gotten as an FC when I was like younger FC was actually from Alterari. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He was one of the Goonswarm guys who actually flipped to Horde for stuff and things, and then surprise ended up coming back. Dude's a great FC. He was a great mentor. He taught me a lot of what I know. He said, FCing is not necessarily a streamlined thing. It's all about how you decide to do it. Pretty much in layman's terms, it's all how you decide to skin a cat. So, in terms of like answering your question, I actually look at everyone's comments. I want to know everyone's thoughts on like my fleets, like whether it's my Logi anchor, whether it's my backseat, whether it's my whoever is the op commander is, all the way to the line member, line goon, because the way that I see it is I can't be a fleet commander without a fleet, and you can't have a fleet without a fleet commander. I always look at it, and I always explain it as a very like symbiotic relationship that feeds off of each other. You can't do one without the other. So it really all just comes down to your own personal preference.
What about the standpoint from your FC program, right? What would you like to see the FC is getting, right? Not from the standpoint of an FC who put an AR out, but from the standpoint of somebody who is organizing that program.
They look for learning from your mistakes. Like a lot of how we operate, we don't necessarily care if you whelp a fleet. It really just all depends on the situation. But majority of the time, if you take Eagles out and like, I'll give an example. So the second time that I fought I FC'd Eagles, I got super cocky because the first Eagle fleet, I had a full 250-man fleet, and I completely dumpstered XIX for like 4 hours straight with that fleet. So I was really, really cocky in them. I was really confident with them. And second fleet, I hear 60-man serve fleet coming through the gate. I'm like, oh yeah, that's fine. Warp at 0, load Jav, and just go from there. Well, got baited by 60-man serve fleet into 30 Bargas and into more battleships, and I whelped my entire fleet. I lost the entire fleet. I lost my monitor, lost my snakes, everything. So, what did I learn from that? Don't fight serves at 0. So it's just a matter of like, what does the actual FC like take from it? What did they learn?
How much experience do you have with smaller gang than like 25 or whatever? Like if it's more like, I don't know, 5 to 15.
In terms of what, like fleets?
Like FCing, that sort of thing.
I mean, I do 15 to 20-man bomber gangs all the time. Or I'll do co-ops gangs, so, T3Cs and Stratios and all that.
Is it pretty transferable between like the smaller and larger things, or is there a different like set of skills you need?
I would say you have to know how to like actually PvP in small gang, and I actually think smaller gangs, so like the 15 to 20 man, I actually think you get a lot more value, at least if it's even numbers, you get a lot more value from E-War, and one of my favorite ships, on top of the Stratios is a Curse. I love that ship. Nothing makes somebody so mad when they can't shoot you at 0. So, you can do that, or, I think the Carries is an okay ship as well. Kitsunes. 3 Kitsunes and a Logi wing just fall apart. So it's all about how you approach the situation, but definitely, like, the skills are absolutely transferable. Whether it's target priority, whether it's recognizing, hey, I just did 2 volleys into this basilisk, I'm not breaking it, switch targets. And it's knowing when to do stuff like that. Before we get any more people that are asking questions, do you want to ask or answer Troy's question here? He asked, what is the typical entry point for a new KarmaFleet FC? What's the first thing they encounter, /receive, /jump into when they first join FC training group? KarmaFleet specifically, like, the only reason I can speak on it is because, well, it's my program. We didn't necessarily have a lot of activity there. Our previous, like, FC guru for KarmaFleet specifically in-house ended up leaving. It's not a big deal, no drama with it. So I pretty much just took all of the FCs that we actually have, like, my good friends that are actually FCs with me, and I asked them if they wanted to be mentors. And so what we do is we just pretty much said, hey, if you want to learn to FC, if you want to have a mentor, you can have a mentor if you want. If not, take a fleet, go shoot things, go blow things up, go have fun. That has been, like, the main goal is content. Take fleets out, go have fun, get people in KarmaFleet engaged with each other, get them talking to each other, because, you know, a corporation is only as cool as its culture. Hope that answered it for you.
Yeah, speaking of new FCs, I'd be curious to know what you think is like a good or maybe the best doctrine to roll out for a brand new FC, and where would you take it? And what we'll usually do is Magic Merlins and Lowsec, which has advantages and disadvantages, but I don't know what you all think about that.
I mean, I wouldn't say, this is just my own personal opinions, right? A few bread and butter doctrines that I think work really well, that we do with KarmaFleet, University, Caracles and Scythe. It's such an awesome doctrine because it's, 1, it's cheap as hell, 2, it's relatively easy to fly, and 3, you get enough of them, well, you're killing something big because alpha is scary. I also think Tristan's, like, you just get, 15, 20 people in Tristan's, and the drone balls are pretty terrifying when you actually see them. Retributions. I think retributions are cool. That's one of my favorite fun doctrines to fly. And cormorants. I think cormorants are also another, like, awesome one. Cormorants, kestrels, retries, caracles. And then, like, once you get somebody that you think actually can, like, hold their own, feroxes, because I think feroxes are very important to learn because eagles are very good, like, in terms of defensive stuff.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's exciting. Nice to be talking to you and not shooting you for a change, by the way. Howdy.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think I recognize that name.
I'm occasionally out with the honey hunters in Delve. It's been a while, though.
I'm sorry for dropping big things on you.
Yeah, my standing record is smart bombing Titans, getting dropped in my fleet due to a Horde spy. That was exciting.
Makes
Lost
sense.
a whole Blop's fleet. Life is hard. What are you going to do?
Such is dull.
Yeah, good times. So the follow-up question is, how do you get content, especially for us? I think when I take out Caracles or when I think about taking out Feroxes, I really struggle with making anybody stay on grid with me. Usually what happens is our tackle gets blown up, and then if it's something smaller than us, which it happens sometimes, not often, but sometimes, they just leave. And if it's bigger than us, we will. So I have a hard time holding targets that are approachable with some more of the long-range doctrines like RLML Caracles specifically, which is why I usually fly ham Caracles with tackle instead.
Right. That's such a difficult question, and especially in my position, right? If you look at the at least the politics and the alliances that actually are allied to each other. Brave used to be somebody that I used to be like, you know what, I'm going to go fight Brave a little bit. Not because I actually dislike them. I actually really love Brave. I know a few guys over there, awesome FCs, awesome people. I met Jinx in DC, awesome person. It's just really difficult to actually find a lot of content right now just because of the state of the game. Faction Warfare is, I think, a very good opportunity. Two of the other things that I use quite often is Turner and Thera. So Turner is pretty much the case-based Thera. It's awesome to use. You can get in, snipe somebody, get out. And, if you just want to look at the efficiency from your BR, you can definitely be very stringent on that because you can just use hit and run tactics. Gate camps in the middle of somebody's space. I've done gate camps in Horde. Actually, 3 weeks ago, I ended up doing a SNS, which we always do a big Saturday night fleet for KarmaFleet, where we just listen to our buddy Mind One, who's the DJ on Twitch, and we just drink and have fun and just go shoot things. I might still have that BR somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Give me a moment. Here it is. So it looks like a whelp, and it was a whelp because I think people were a little too drunk at that point. We were just like, yeah, screw it, we're just going to fight him at 0. We just tried to go blow up a hick. But I mean, this is why I say cormorants are absolutely nasty. You get enough of them, you just cycle things. It's beautiful. But doing things like that, like one jump out of their stager, setting up a bubble, and just orbiting the bubble at whatever optimal range, and just plinking everything that comes through. So that's a good way to do it. I know you were saying you do Black Ops. Black Ops is a great way. Hot drops are awesome. Do you guys understand the star map? Do you guys know what interference is? Might be giving out some trade secrets here.
Is that the crab beacon thing?
Yes. So that's something to look at, and you match that up. So for the evening, if I'm looking to go do stuff in Eve, I'll log on, pull up my star map immediately, go to interference, pull up Thera, pull up Turner, and I look to see if I have nice routes to that area, and then I'll go hunt around and see if I want to go whaling or whatever. Killing capital ships is very invigorating, and it gets the fleet so hyped up. And dreads and carriers are very easy to just annihilate.
What's your numbers for that? What's the minimum number you'd be happy to go out with? And
25 T2 warps. Loaded with voids. Rorquals, Kikimoras, I'd say 50 to 75. I know it's a little rough on Eve Uni guys, I'm sure.
Yeah, for Eve Uni not, perhaps.
I think you can do... I don't know the exact fit, but I know if you want to go kill, carriers, right? A solid option would be nuding Vexers with drones. That's a good option.
What about if you have 25 mixed torps, right? T1, T2, but you drop in 2-3 blobs into it?
You could probably take a carrier or a dread. I think the dread might cycle one of the blobs, but
yeah. So, okay. And what blobs would you use?
I'm a little partial towards my Redeemer.
DPS or neuting?
Both. I think you can do both really well. A lot of people like Panthers and Sins. I just think the DPS Redeemer is just so much better.
Okay.
Marshals if you want to get spicy, but
I've seen your 25 Marshal fleets.
they're fun. They're very, very fun.
How do you... Let me ask this differently. Is there a certain level of basic PvP proficiency you expect people to have before they join the FC program?
I would actually say no. And the reason I say so is because, like, fleet combat is completely different than me going out in my Stratios and trying to solo something, right? Like, it's a completely different skill set. I don't have to know what every module on my ship does when I'm FCing, because 90% of the time it's prop mod, shield hardener, and probe. That's about it. I just have to make sure that my ship can tank and go as fast as my fleet is. That's about it. So it's relatively simple because you're leaning more towards your numbers and what your fleet composition is, as opposed to what you are flying. However, I will say that anchoring is also a very, very important part, and that's something that is learned, and most people that do solo and small gang PvP and are very good at it know how to stay within their ranges and how to manually pie it. So I wouldn't say it's like a prerequisite to, you have to have 37 solo kills in this ship to be FC. Like, obviously, like, being a little facetious there. But I genuinely don't think that you need any FC experience or PvP experience. In fact, I'll give an example. One of my good IRL friends, I ended up getting them into EVE Online. Industry nerd. That's all they are. Like, and I was like, you should go take out a fleet. And so they ended up starting doing Friday night fleets for KarmaFleet University, 10 to 12 caracals, and they come back super excited. They're like, oh yeah, we got this kill, and they link a battleship. I'm like, what the hell? How did that happen? So, it all comes down to whatever people are comfortable with, and if they show potential and they show that they want to do it and the drive, let them do it. That's what I would say.
How do you support them doing it beyond letting them do it and pinging it out? Right? You can learn a lot from just go forth and kill stuff, right? But
yeah,
there's a limit. So how do you actually facilitate that more?
So you can facilitate it a few different ways, right? How I personally do it, like, I'll backseat them, right? I won't necessarily give them, like, commands, or I'll have them backseat me. Like, I won't tell them, like, micromanage them. I won't say, like, hey, pull your fleet, pull your fleet, pull your fleet. Like, I might if it's like 100%, like, you're dying, dude, just get out. But I try to ensure that I build the confidence of the FC first, because I think that is another big important part. I try to hit on these big points that I have. FC confidence is really kind of what the fleet hears, right? So if I'm sitting here talking to you and I'm like, go for this best. Actually, no, go for this. No, go for that. Like, you guys are like, we're dead. We're so screwed. So, like, being able to say, Bassi, AD, primary, secondary, CD. Like, it's that confidence of knowing what to call, when to call it, and when to, like, talk in a manner that even if you make a mistake, you don't show that you made a mistake, because fleet morale, as you guys know, is pretty damn important too. You don't want people just, like, leaving fleet because they're like, yeah, this is dumb. Why should I be here? So I think that's an important part of it. Obviously, I can't really speak on, like, how you guys can handle it financially. I'm not really a numbers guy, but Just like I said, taking them to CC and just like brawling, getting them the experience, just getting them having somebody that is more experienced just in comms with them and like doing a military. I'm a military guy. So military always calls it hot wash, AAR, same thing. Hot wash is more of a verbal debrief of, okay, we just did this fight. We're sitting at tether now. Hey, so I noticed you did this. Why did you do this? And ask them. Like I don't ask them like in a vicious manner, but I ask them, hey, why did you make that decision? And they'll talk it out. Sometimes they'll be like, actually, wow, that was really dumb of me. Or they're like, well, I did it because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, oh, I guess I didn't think of that. So, I mean, use it as a learning for both people. There's plenty of times that I've seen a, very young FC who I thought didn't have any idea what they were doing. Turns out they're, seeing the Matrix, 30 seconds ahead in the future, and they end up catching something, and I'm like, I didn't even know how the hell you did that. He's like, luck mostly. Like, well, you sounded like you knew what you're doing. So, hope that helps, or I hope that answered it.
Let me pull out a secondary point that you did, that you made. Do you think an FC training program depends on the willingness of people, more experienced people, to backseat? Can it survive without that?
I would say it depends on volume, right? So if you have a bunch of FCs that actually, like, you have a bunch of people, let's say you have 30 people that want to go learn to FC. One of the things that I was told when I was younger is find other, people at my FC level and do operations with them, take out fleets, backseat each other, learn from each other, help each other out. So I'll be anchoring one fleet, somebody else will be target calling, somebody else would be logi anchor. And like 3 of my best friends in EVE Online are also FCs at the same level with me, and we have all grown together, and we still continue to hunt together and do a bunch of other things. So now whenever there's an operation that comes out, and one of us does it, the other 2 hop in, and then we all know how each other operates. So it's more of a familiarity thing, and people can kind of like figure out who they work well with and who they don't. So that's also an option, but it also kind of depends on the volume. So if you only have 3 people that want to do it, I would encourage them to work together, but if they don't like each other, they don't like each other at the end of the day. And that's kind of personalities. They just clash at times.
Do you use any other materials except for taking fleets out for teaching FCs? Videos, stuff like that?
It's encouraged for our FCs to actually record. So, just a secondary AAR. But videos are kind of, it's an odd thing, right? Some people excel at it, some people don't. Trial by fire has always been like the Goon way, so it's kind of a little bit more tradition as well. That's why I may be a little bit more biased, because that's also how I learn. I have just been like, you know what? When I first I'll give you a good example. When I first took over Bomberwolf, I actually had no idea how to do bombing outside of like solo on a gate. I had to learn all of that as I took these guys out. So while I'm FCing these guys, I have, vectors pulled up on my other screen, and I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. Okay, squad 1, warp here. Squad 2, warp here. Squad 3, warp here. Okay, everyone align. Uncloak, bomb, 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 bomb. So you can use, testimonies and, kind of, syllabus, I guess is a good way to say it, and reading material. But I think a lot of that is more theory, and a lot of people will get caught up in PIFA bait, right? So they'll be like, oh yeah, I have this doctrine, and on paper it looks like it's going to hold well, but in practice it might not. So that's why there's always the 2 parts to it. There's the theory, and then there's the practice.
Mm-hmm. More asking in by way of, for example, a lot of new FCs may have no idea about some basic things like some fleet roles, stuff like that, right? And if there's nobody necessarily immediately available to walk them through it, then other materials might be useful.
Yeah, I could see that definitely being like, crash course guide. I know we have a forum thread. I could like pull it up. I don't think I can necessarily read from it for obvious reasons.
So speaking of the specialty roles, we've sort of got you've got different organizational functions. You've got a sort of PvP training function, sort of an FC training function, and then like a tactical command function and a sort of general staff function. And right now, in the past in Uni, they've all been sort of blended together in our fleet program with different parts having different emphasis. And one of the things that we've been struggling with lately is that the right answer? Should we do it differently? One of the things is if there's certain structures that get one type of defense and other structures which only get locally organized defenses, but then those groups have been getting even more organized. So just kind of curious as to what approaches you've seen for like chopping up different pieces, whether within the same organization, different organizations, et cetera.
Ooh, that's a deep one. I think it's more of like whatever occurs naturally. I think it's like generally the best. Whatever occurs naturally, and I say naturally, like whatever ends up happening just on its own is generally the best course because that's the comfortable way to do it. That's how people do it. For example, when we were working with B2, right? They actually had direct comms to our command comms, so they actually were in our global chat. So me and my fleet, I could hear the global chatter between everyone else. I can hear the ops commander. I can hear Asher giving commands. I can hear Asher talking to Jinx, or I can hear Asher talking to like their tactical command and stuff like that. So, like that's one way to do it. Some people are a little bit more nervous about that. Some people aren't. Just 42. It's another kind of one of those. Well, it depends. But as far as like, I just want to make sure I'm getting this right. You were talking about like internal, your command and tactical and training as well as your general admin is like all blended to the same people, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like right now within the umbrella of our SC team, you've got sort of the general staff function who like figure out what our standard fits and doctrines are going to be and sort of figure out grand strategy. You've got like the tactical FCs who like will lead our more important fleets in battle. You've got an FC training group, and then you've also got this sort of general responsibility for PvP training in some fashion that's not really well defined, but then you also have our education department, which does more like slideshow classes on PvP training topics. So it's just and then separately now in our nullsec area, there's certain structures which the uni has not agreed to bring under its general umbrella, but for whatever reason people put up on their own, and then those people have like a separate fleet organization function that doesn't get the same ping privileges, but that has sort of independently duplicated some of this functionality. So right now there's a pause in operations and we're all sort of looking around trying to think, is there a better way to do this? What should we learn from this? Just sort of reevaluating.
Could I try to restate that slightly? And I apologize.
No, you're fine, dude. Go for it.
So you mentioned that you've got 3 tiers, right? Could you discuss sort of what those 3 tiers mean as far as FCs go? And if it doesn't become immediately apparent, where does small gang little stuff fit?
Okay. Yes, I can answer that question. So it goes skirmish command, which is day 1 learning to FC, all the way to could be 3 years FCing. It just all depends on how the higher ups look at you, and like I'm trying to like skirt around like this without sounding like a complete, excuse my language, asshole.
No, go ahead.
I'll give an example without saying names. There was a skirmish commander who 3 years experience. Dude never made any mistakes. So when you look at, from promotion to doing like strategic operations, that's not something that fits our agenda as an alliance, because while you need to have an ego to some extent, if your ego is the only thing you care about in that fleet and not actually the objective, you are not something that we want. So that's generally, some people kind of fit that, and they're still in the skirmish command, which is like the lowest level. Then you have tactical commanders, which people like myself, a few other friends of mine, they know how to do in Tosis fleets. You can hand them a strategic operation, say, handle this, and they'll be like, yeah, got it. Like, it may end up going well, it may end up not going well, but it just kind of all depends. Most of the time, it's like, hey, we kicked this timer for another day because Intel was, they had 3 250-man fleets and a Leshak fleet. So, like, no, that's not happening with our numbers right now in this time zone. And then you have fleet command. So our structure is actually based on keys. So me as a tactical commander, I can take out hacks. I don't need to have somebody to babysit me. Skirmish commander, we can allow people to have certain keys, but they have to be handheld to some extent just to make sure things go well. And then fleet command is generally, take whatever. Does that help answer?
Again, this started as Alistair's question, and I stomped all over it. But I guess then, when it comes to doctrines and sort of administrata, could you speak to a little bit about how the FC team interacts with those functions?
We actually don't. So I do a lot of admin specifically because I have a special interest group. My bomber group is an alliance level special interest group, SIG. It operates on an alliance level. So I actually deal with a lot of the admin, and I manage all of our FCs. I tell them, hey, I have this timer. Go do this, please. Hey, you go do this. Hey, I like you. I like what you've been doing. I'm promoting you to, senior FC, whatever. And then I'll take that and I'll be like, hey, this guy's been doing this, 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 and this. And I'll go to our military director and be like, this guy needs to be promoted. Like, you can't tell me no. Like, and I'll just lay everything on the table. It gets really political in like very larger things. Like, I can't tell you how frustrating a lot of that is. I'm sure you guys probably see a little slice of that. The inter-coalition politics and stuff like that is annoying as hell to me. But as far as like the alliance-wide, I don't necessarily deal with any admin stuff. That's actually mostly based on Cord and stuff like that, as well as our directors. Like, our directors we have an entire fitting team. Our fitting team does all of our fittings and doctrines. It gets trial run. So I also forgot to answer as far as small gang, I do small gang all the time. I love small gang. I do it with covert ops and T3Cs. I'll go into a wormhole and go bully some poor marauder or praxis.
As somebody who is part of the EVE Uni wormhole campus, I applaud that effort.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny.
Marauders need bullying.
They do.
That was going to be my question. We'll get to that later. So, Alistair, again, I kind of stomped on your question, but I thought I saw a thread in there. Did we come close to? Because I think what Joe said is that there is probably more differentiation between FC and administration of fleets than maybe we have.
Yeah, I think that's right.
For what it's worth, so we have FC education team, right? Right now, the lead on that is actually my good buddy Sonrir. I'm sure you've probably seen that name a few times. I personally think that you guys probably all have like strategic op experience. You guys all should have fleet experience. I think people in education should have that experience and should be well-rounded. Like, they should be able to know how to do Intosis. Like, I actually don't even think you guys need to do that. I don't know if you are or not.
You don't have to, no.
So, they should have a good baseline of everything. And if they don't, they should be able to say, like me specifically, my specialty is covert ops, wormholes, and black ops, as well as, bomber. So like I tend to stick to that in my lane. Yes, I could take a hack fleet, but I would much prefer my 500-man bomber fleet. Troy asked a question. Does that mean Goon's fitting team creates the doctrines for all corps under the umbrella? That's a odd question to me. So while I handle KarmaFleet, like yes, we have corporations within the alliance and then the alliance within the coalition, right? You have the whole breakdown of the Imperium versus Goonswarm. Dracaris are allies of ours. They have an Ishtar fleet. We don't, as Goonswarm. So as far as like the doctrine team, the fitting team actually does create fleet doctrines, and that is an all ping, so it goes out to every corporation. We actually have a differentiation between corporation fleets and alliance fleets. So if it's an alliance fleet, it's going to be an alliance doctrine. If it's a corp fleet, it's going to be a corp doctrine, or we call it shit stack. It's pretty much kitchen sink. Or we actually have like KarmaFleet has Kestrel Doctrine, we have a Quorum Doctrine, we have a Thrasher Doctrine, we have Gate Camp, Dommies. So, what is Entosis about? Oh, it's like one of the most miserable things you'll ever experience if you do nullsec life, dude. So Entosis is Sov warfare. If you ever see those iHubs, it's contesting those. Anytime I've ever done a contested Entosis, it's been at least 6+ hours. I've had one where I had like a 13-hour stint of FCing. It was miserable. It's one thing I'm hoping that CCP changes for the best, of course. But we shall see.
One thing we're struggling with is how to put this? By design, a very large proportion of our members, once they hit a certain level of expertise, graduate out to another corp. And so we might have time to get someone trained up in one advanced doctrine like links or T3 cruisers or something, but we probably don't have time to get someone up into 2 because by the time they're that far, there's a decent chance they're leaving the uni. So, one of the things we're grappling with is sort of how do we decide what to prioritize, and how do we help people figure out what sort of stuff they might enjoy most.
Are you asking like what doctrines to prioritize?
Or also what roles? Because we have a slate of doctrines, and the doctrines have slates of roles. But like a couple months ago, there was a big push to get more people in the bombers, because we realized we were at a point where we could not reliably field the bomber wing. We're a strat op, and so we've got some people doing bombers, and sort of looking around. Well, do we double down on bombers? Do we try to get more people on links? Like in theory, more links would be helpful with a bunch of different types of roams. The links are also a long train, so how many would still be around? But it's just we get people for a limited time, and they're happy to take suggestions and direction from us as to where they should focus, but we're not always sure how best to direct them.
I apologize. This probably sounds like a broken record. I also feel like that answer is also like, well, it depends. I mean, I can't speak for you guys' numbers, right? So like, it depends on volume, I think. Me personally, and actually, like, I had to fight for our bomber wing in StratOps because for the longest time, Goons like lost that ability. They didn't know how to bomb. Goons are notoriously bad at this game, just so you're aware.
You gave it to Init.
Init did do a lot of bombers, but we actually had our own internal. I love Init. They're so awesome. They're fun people. But anyway, so for the longest time, like Goonswarm would be like, no, I don't want bombers. No, I want more main fleet. I want more main fleet. I want more main fleet. Give me more Serbs. Give me more Feroxes. Give me more Hurricanes. Give me more Dictors. All of that. So it just all comes down to what ends up happening, like from strat op to strat op. Sometimes you need bombers, sometimes you don't. If somebody shows up with a fleet of battleships, I'm going to be like, well, there's no point in me having bombers, so let's go get let's get a flycatcher fleet, so we can just bubble them to death. Or let's get a sentinel wing.
Yeah, that's a good. I was going to follow up with, except for obviously the bombers that you take out, but so maybe you specifically or you generically as KarmaFleet. What's your favorite thing to do with like absolutely fresh, knows nothing players? What do you do on a strat op on a big fleet? Where do you put them?
We actually have something specifically for them. There's 3 different things you can do, obviously. So you can do a vigil, which I should hope as a new player you actually can play a vigil. Like if you come into nullsec, generally like people can play a vigil. So we have vigils, we have like a Kitsune or a Griffin you can fly. Like any E-war frigate is generally like accepted. You might get yelled at if you're like in a carries, because like one carries in my fleet is going to do nothing, go away, or get into a vigil. Fast tackle, so get them in a malediction. That's one way to do it. Newbies are like the most important part for pretty much any. They're the lifeblood of any corporation. Simply because, well, if you don't have newbies, your corporation's going to end up dying. So we always try to get them in something that is like not necessarily important to like make or break the fleet, but something that they actually feel that they have a role and they're making an impact in. So your fast tackle frigates are ideal for that. Or you can have them doing scouting. So I know there's a lot of times where if I see a new name in my fleet, or I'll click on them, see how long they've been in Goons, I'll be like, hey, I see that you're flying this, like a Raptor or whatever, just something random frigate. Do you mind +1ing me? Can you scout for me? Like, yeah, I'll have my own scout, but I can place him somewhere now to where I could say, hey, warp to this gate at 100, burn me a perch at 300 above, and they'll do that. So now they have a tactical purpose, and they're be like, wow, like this is cool. I get to do something important. But as far as like everything else, like you don't really need to have a bunch of skill points to be important in Neve Online. We have the old propaganda where it's like it only takes one person from X-47 and stuff like that, the big Titan and a super carrier graveyard. But MTAC, I believe. I wasn't around during that, so almost lost my train of thought. But all of our doctrines are fit with T2 modules. You can always meta them and still get SRP for it. So you're not required to have T2 weapons.
Do you FCQRFs much?
Home defense, absolutely. My style is usually more bombers, or not bombers, Black Ops, but I've taken Ferox fleets, I've taken Eagle fleets to defend home, and I've done quick reaction force. I've also done reinforcement fleets where I'm just orbiting a Sino at 50, and I'm trying to obliterate anything that comes in to fight my Sino. Some solo small gang PvP as an FC in a large scale battle. It's pretty cool. From time to time, we'll get people from Frat or Horde to come out and just go mess with one of the iHubs. They'll try to hack it just to be annoying. Take like 3-4 dudes out there and go just waste the guy. So it doesn't have to always be like a large scale response, but just kind of all depends.
Do you do any specific training to help people get more accustomed to how to be more effective in a QRF?
No, we don't do like anything specific, right? We like to see at least how our organization operates. We like to see who naturally fits the role. This is actually one of the talking points I actually wanted to talk about. I said earlier, as an FC, you have to have a little bit of ego, but not too much to where you're just an annoying person. So we like to see if people naturally are like a sponge rather than, no, you're wrong. No, well, I did this. Okay. I like other crap games like League of Legends. I'm sure you've seen plenty of videos online where, some guy's coaching him and the guy who's coaching is top 5 in the world for this specific champion or this specific role. And, some guy who's in bronze or iron's like, no, you're wrong. And he's like, lol, okay. So, people that are that mentality where they're like, well, I'm right, you're wrong. I don't like that. I like more of an open discussion. So I think in terms of looking at who actually wants to FC and stuff like that, I always look and I always try to gravitate towards people that are open and eager. If you're backseating me and you ask me 1,000 questions, I'll probably tell you to shut up if I'm calling targets, but I'll say hold it and ask me afterwards. But that right there is my cue to be like, you're my little baby bird. Get under my wing right now.
How do you help your small gangers negotiate the transition from really small ops to bigger ops, strat ops, stuff like that?
We actually don't have a lot of that. There's one FC that I know right now that is coming from small gang. He's doing okay. He's just been pinging out combat scepter. She's been doing pretty well. I think a lot of small gang guys, if they're proficient in their trade, they generally know what they're doing and they can scale it because everything you need is scalable. Whether it's ship v ship 1-on-1, whether it's 3v3, whether it's 150 versus 150, all of it's scalable, and it just all comes down to doctrine numbers as well as priority target calling. I think one of the best ways that I actually learned, this is going to sound really, really mean for me to say this. I'm a drone pilot. I've been flying a Stratios and as an Astero for a very long time. Without drones, Stratios and an Astero are pretty much just there to tank. It sounds awfully familiar to F1 ships. So I look at it at drone operations. If I have my drones split up on multiple different things, or where do I want my drones? So I look at my fleet. When I was first learning, I was like, oh, well, all of my mainline ships, all of my Feroxes are drones, and my monitor is just my Stratios. Okay, well, so that's kind of how I transitioned to that. I think most of your small gang guys are proficient enough to where you hand them a fleet doctrine, as long as they look it over, they can probably understand it. Small gang is such a vicious thing.
May have phrased the question not very well. I don't mean competent small gangers. I mean people who have played around with small things. And they're starting to help out in strat-ops and stuff. How do you help them there?
So you're talking about your newbies and frigates and destroyers?
Not necessarily maybe newbies, but not necessarily seasoned small gangers either. It's not a transition between small gang and big ops. It's transition between slightly newer people who have FC'd a few fleets and suddenly, for whatever reason, they find themselves in something more strategic.
Okay, so you're talking about somebody who's just used to doing peacetime roams.
Yeah.
And then throwing them into a strategic op.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Give me a second to think on this one. I'm trying to sort out my own biases here. I'm a strategic ops FC. I can't tell you how many times we've gone on deployment and I've seen half of our list of tactical commanders, all of our mid-level FCs just dip off the face of the earth because it's not peacetime and they can't ping their combat interceptors. But that's salt for a different day. Honestly, like, it all depends on just what you're comfortable with. If you ask somebody to do it and they accept it, there's obviously, like, willingness to do it. And I think that willingness should be earned by letting them operate independently. And, like, just kind of having somebody there to kind of help guide them and calm them down. I know, like, I had a junior FC. I was like, hey, during X-47 up in the north, during the B-2 war and all that, I asked one of my junior FCs to run our strategic ops bomber wing. I was not on grid. I told him, I was like, I'm not going to be on grid. I will not be there to help you. I am here to talk to you, and I'm here to calm you down. And just being able to sit there and say, hey, that's a good choice. Stick with that. And, like, just have someone around for them to ask questions to, because sometimes, like, just those nerves alone kills more fleets than bad decisions. Because people make mistakes all the time. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, mistakes are mistakes. It only matters if the enemy FC can actually capitalize on that mistake. That's really what it comes down to. So, like, if somebody actually is willing to, like if you actually ask somebody, hey, can you do this strategic op, and they've never done a strategic op, and they say yes, they have the inherent willingness to do it. So reward them by giving them that operation, and reward them by giving them the independence to actually work in that. You want to build that confidence. You want to encourage that behavior, if that makes sense.
You mentioned independence. Do you give any independence at all for the FC to choose what doctrine they're gonna take? Or strat up, I mean.
Yes, actually. So there's kind of like a two-part to this, right? Yes, and then if they give something that is like a really bad idea, like, I don't know, I'm going to throw something like really ridiculous out there. We're fighting Marauders, and this FC says, well, I'm going to take Kestrels. Why the hell would you do that? That's dumb. No. Give me Eagles. Or give me Sacks. Give me Zealots. Give me Hurricane. Anything other than that. Like, it all comes down to, you want to... Every opportunity is a teaching opportunity, at least in my eyes. So you want to give them that opportunity to make mistakes to some extent. I think that's actually, like, really, really valuable, right? That's why, like I said, get people out, get people go fighting, because you're giving them the opportunity to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. Trial by fire is pretty damn good, in my opinion. But if you have a specific doctrine in mind and give them the opportunity to be like, hey, well, I want to take this, and ask them why. Sit down, have a conversation with them if you actually have time for it. We always do a hour and a half beforehand. We have a bunch of FCs fighting each other in our pre-op brief, and we're going back and forth. No, this doctrine. No, this doctrine. No, I think this doctrine because of this. Yeah, well, that's dumb. And people go back and forth with it for hours. So it just all depends on how you guys operate. Like, I think I told somebody before, Ferox Fleet. Ferox Fleet is just such a bread and butter doctrine. It's so hard to go wrong with the Ferox.
Sorry, just remembering a few examples.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Do you ever go, hey, you there, you're getting this doctrine, now go forth and fly it? In a strat op.
Yes. So it'll actually be more so for people under me, because I'm usually already in a fleet. I can't necessarily go ping another one. But they'll ping out to skirmish commanders and say, hey, somebody X up, get me a flycatcher ping. and the first person to ping a flycatcher ping gets sent out and say, okay, go do it. And they'll get pretty much thrust into the fire. Obviously, like we know each other's voices, so when we hear a new voice, like, you're at the bottom of the totem pole, my guy, you better listen to everybody else, or you're going to get told to shut up real fast. So, but yeah, we definitely give that opportunity very often. I can't tell, like, actually, that's how I got promoted. Is I was super nervous to ask a lot of the bigger FCs to back seat, so I was like, you know what, I'm going to sit here, I'm going to guess what they want. And at the time it was jackdaws. So I'd always have a jackdaw ping ready to go in our mumble. And the second I saw that ping, I'd hit enter. I'd be the first one to do it every single time.
I want to draw a little bit of a distinction between Gideon's question and your answer. What Gideon asked was different. Yeah. So what I heard the answer is that we will declare a doctrine and ask who wants to do it. Is that, am I misinterpreting what you said?
Yeah, we kind of do both, right? So it just depends on the level. That's why it's such a hard question for me to answer, because me as a tactical commander, I have a little bit more liberty. Well, I'll be like, no, I don't want to take that. I want to take this. And that also comes down to, well, I'm going to lean towards what I'm more comfortable with. I like instant application, but I also like missiles. So, like, you know, it just kind of depends. I prefer lasers to hybrids, so I prefer a laser doctrine than a hybrid doctrine. So, like, if somebody is experienced in something and they think that they can take it and be successful, I would let them. That's just my personal opinion.
Keep going, sirs.
No, that's fine. Like, for example, I'm gonna use my Stratius as an example. If somebody is like, well, we have T3Cs. You know, we have 4 T3Cs that we're taking out hunting. You're not taking a Stratios. I'm going to be like, yes, but there's not any Stratios pilot that's like me in New Eden. There's probably like 4 or 5 that can do what I can do. And I know this because I have conversations with them, and we yell at each other back and forth, and we talk crap. So, like, if I'm confident in it, I'm confident in it. Like, let them be confident in it. And if not, like, it's a double-edged sword. So if they say yes and they learn something from it, even by failing, they still learn something from it.
I think what everyone is going around and not quite saying, like, several times for Stratops in a recent null set campaign, like, someone, like, volunteers and, like, to run it and then gets told, like, you're running, like, Caracols and Ospreys with Griffin Ebor, like, later on, and I guess, like, a FC being, like, I'm willing to, like, run this, like, structure timer, and then, like, later on just being told, like, what doctrine you're going to be taking out.
Okay, so it sounds a little bit more intercourt politics, right?
No, so no. So the context of that was, so the uni has this MAD system, and that's my bias is showing, of organizing stratops by, there's a group, very small group of people, some of them have seen, some of them are not, who ping out a stratop, and they go, this is the op, that it will happen there, this will be the doctrine, X up for roles and for FCs. It's not, you know, you already have a fleet out and you need a bubbler fleet, and you know you're just roping an FC in for that particular function in your larger op.
Right.
This is get what I mean?
I think I see what you mean, and I think like we're miscommunicating here on some extent.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the main point that I was saying is, if you are not the FC, you should not be dictating what the fleet is. You shouldn't be dictating the doctrine. That's just my personal opinion, and like, it also just kind of depends on mainline doctrine. So I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen what we run, right? You see a lot of Hurricanes, Feroxes, Sacks. You know, it's just Lashaks. You see a lot of those from us. So like, you're generally going to see one of those fleets, right, on grid. So it just all depends on what your main doctrine is. But this is why I say it sounded a little bit like corp politics, because it sounds like there's a little bit of bad blood. I'm not judging. Trust me, there's plenty of times that I can start talking crap on some of the things that I've talked to people about and that are higher up. Trust me.
No corp politics at all. I'm not even in the corp. I don't care about unipolitics. My question is purely,
Anymore.
I see a system which is insane to me. That's fine, but
right, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
By
So
that.
yeah. So, but biases aside, that was the context of the question, and whether you think that reasonably works or not. I can tell you what I think, but I'm more interested in what you think.
Yeah, no. At the end of the day, like, I think there's a trade-off. So, it all comes down to finances as well as like
Absolutely.
who's running the fleet. So if the alliance or whatever is, or your organization is saying, no, we can't do this, but we can do this. Or hey, we're willing to throw this much ISK at the problem. Take whatever the hell you want. Like, let it come down to the FC, but I still am the FC that is running it should be the one that is actually deciding what doctrine, because it is their operation. That is how we operate. Well, for example, Asher might say, hey, I need an FC for this. If I volunteer and I'm the one running mainline, it is no longer, it is not Asher's, like, he may come in and come have a conversation with me and say, hey, actually, I was just talking with this other coalition, let's divert over here. I'm going to listen to him. But at the end of the day, I am mainline, I am main fleet, it is my operation. I am the one calling the shots for everything. I am working with the other ones, and I am the ops commander. So that's how we operate. Like, aside from all the people that are talking about, administration. If somebody from admin says, no, you're running this doctrine, I would have very colorful words for them. I promise you that.
So on a slightly different note, you've mentioned repeatedly running ops with coalition partners or alliance partners and things like that, and including strategic operations stuff, and you're doing some stuff. Our closest comparison to that is what we've seen in nullsec, where some structured offenses are run by one group and some structured offenses are run by another group. I wonder if you have any advice for how, in that situation, we might be able to better coordinate or better, how do we sort of maximize, what sorts of tips might you have for us to most effectively make things work, given that there's two different organizations that are, in theory, at least working toward the same end, but each have their own way of doing things?
To me, that sounds like it comes a lot down to your diplomats. So it just comes down to that, as well as like your organization leader, if they want to say, hey, you know what, we're going to give them access to our comms, or they have a specific limited area to our mumble. Like, for example, like when we were working with XIX, which, man, you should have seen like how that FC room was. These were FCs that were against each other for years, starting to work together with each other. It got really spicy really quick. So, but like, as long as I can communicate with their fleet commander, I don't care about their fleet. I do not care about their fleet. I just need to know that I can have a conversation with the fleet commander in one comms where I don't have to go sit in like Discord or whatever. If I have to, I will. There's been plenty of times that I've worked with friends in areas that I shouldn't have friends in. Call them on Discord, say, hey, I've got a roll call out here. How many numbers can you get right now? 50. Okay, cool. I've got 75 in fleet. Get in. Here's my route. And we'll work together to achieve a goal. So it all comes down, I think, official lines. I think you should have a little bit more diplomatic relations with them, and you should probably actually reach out to them and say, hey, would you guys be willing to do this? Did I answer that for you?
So what I'm thinking is it's not so much within the same op where you have two different fleets. I'm thinking more if you've got like a strategic level. All right, one op's happening here, one op's happening there. You've got completely different fleets running them by completely different people, but like how can you like make that work more effectively?
Oh, that's like a complex question. There's nothing wrong with it. Honestly, like as long as your FCs can talk to each other, that is like the main thing. And the easier that you can make it, the better those ops are going to go. And like I know you're not necessarily just talking about single strategic operation, but like we'll use the word campaign, right? To where I know you guys, I think you guys said from somebody else talking to you, you guys were working with like your neighbors that were in the same area. You guys were getting punched around by some nullsec. I'm trying to watch my language here.
Low-sec pirates, it's fine.
I'm trying to watch my language.
We understand that comms are a little relaxed here.
Yeah, so I mean I'm looking at it. I see, for example, I see Unifleet's Delta Echo Foxtrot, right? Are those comms linked?
There's very rarely people in both.
So, I mean, it comes down to a numbers thing, right? So,
yeah,
we have Command Alpha, Command Bravo, and then Ops commands, or Ops channels. And the Ops channels is where the rest of your fleet is. Your command is where your fleet command is, your coordination, and we have a lot of them. I can't really necessarily go into detail about all that, but
if you
our command channels are linked.
If you unfold the channels, you'll see that they have sub-channels.
Oh, that's spicy. I don't like that. That's different. Okay, well, let me give you an example. So if you take Alpha in public and Delta in Uni, right? You would have Command 1, 2, 3, 4, and then in Delta you would have Ops 1, 2, 3, 4. So Command would be linked to, or Command 1 would be linked to Op 1, to where if I'm using my local right now, if you actually can see, if I'm using this I'm talking to my fleet. Here I'm talking to just my command channel. So I can sit here and have a conversation with my fleet and say, hey, primary AB, secondary DC, 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 props on, props on, props on, props off, cut props, anchor up, whatever. And then I can say, hey, global, we're sitting on gate ABC. Where are you guys? They'll call back and, say whatever. So.
Okay, so you use the difference between whisper and shout is typically that you are talking to your fleet or you are talking to global.
Yes, I have.
Interesting. Yeah, the way ours is typically set up is that there is no global. And so if you are shouting, you are talking to the F1. And if you're whispering, you're talking to a subset of subcommand.
Yeah, I think so. The thing that I'm trying to hit on is you should have global command because you should be able to, and that global command could be your friends, right? You're in another command channel, and that command channel can be specifically tailored to that corporation or that alliance.
Got it.
So that's how we did it with Initiative. That's how we did it with Dracaris and all of our other friends. So they would have their specific command channel, and they could talk to their fleet in their own mumbles, and I can have a conversation with them if I need to over global.
Now, if somebody is backseating, if you are backseating in UFC, does the fleet hear what you say to that person?
Sometimes. Most of the time, if I'm backseating, I have pretty good control of myself to where I'll be in let's say they're doing Feroxes, right? I'll be in a Drake or whatever FC ship. I'll anchor on them, or I'll say, okay, you have a choice. I can either anchor for you, or you can target call. What do you want to do? And I'll say it all in local. I will just talk to them in local. And now some people, they'll know who I am, and they'll try to chat with me, and I'll talk talk to a fleet because, it's kind of my job if the fleet's really quiet. I don't like that. I find it very awkward. Like, even during strategic ops, like, talk with me. I need to know what's going on. Please talk with me. And then if it's more relaxed, like even during like a structured bash, one of my favorite things to do is just, hey, here's this jukebox link. Go put in music, and it'll probably be like 16 hours of a very inappropriate song instantly. But if I'm backseating, I am there to assist my junior FC. So I am trying to do as much as I can. That is my priority. My priority is not running the fleet. If they die, I instantly take over. But my priority is getting that junior FC to get the confidence to make their own calls. And, I guess, for example, primary this claymore. I'll be like, no, don't do that. Go for the basilisk. That's stupid. I'll explain later.
Will your line members hear you say that?
No.
Okay.
This comes down to like leadership 101, right?
Yeah, no, it's just sort of double checking.
Yeah, no.
Praise in public.
Yep, that's
critique in private.
Mm-hmm. And I have always. That's always how I've operated. I know some people don't. I have my own personal biases towards that, and I think they are a select few colorful words.
Hoping to touch on something you mentioned. From what you've said, it sounds like for some of your training fleets, you might separate the anchor from the FC from the shot caller. And I'd be curious to hear more about that because the way I've normally seen it done in the uni is all three of those are done by the same person.
Okay, so I hate Logi anchors. I genuinely hate Logi anchors, and the reason for this is because a lot of them are. This is going to sound really like elitist of me to say, and I don't mean it to come off as that. So how we operate, we actually have a special interest group that is specifically for logistic ships. And some of those people, like, get paid for LAing. I'm sorry, but I don't really get paid to FC as often as you get paid to LA. So, no. I also don't know who you are. So if I don't know who you are, I'm going to prefer somebody that I know that has worked with me for a very long time. And she's actually a instructor over in KFU. She LAs for me all the time. She always complains about it because she's like, you can't do this to me. And I was like, well, too bad you're doing it. So, but no, anyone who has any sort of like special job, like even from time to time when I have like a dictator pilot that I want to do this very specific thing, I'll pull them into command with me, and we are all on the same command channel. So myself as the FC, my backseat, secondary backseat, my LA, my scout, my coordinator. So command channels can get pretty busy. Like, I mean, there's been times where I've seen one command channel have 50 people in it. Does that kind of help answer? I know it's a little long-winded.
Yeah, that's helpful.
When you say shot caller, what do you mean as opposed to FC?
Okay, so generally there's like two parts to FCing a fleet. We like to make it, we have the resources, like we have the FCs available. Like generally you'll have your main FC, who is the fleet is under, the advert is under, and they're the ones getting the credit for it. They're the ones calling the operation. And then you have your backseat. Generally, your backseat can do one of two things, either one of three things, depending on if you want to just do both. Target calling, which is specifically broadcasting and doing it. Target calling and anchoring at the same time when you have 7,000 ships on grid gets really crazy. So usually what we do is one person will anchor the fleet. They will be the one who is just driving the fleet. And then the back seat is the one who is calling the targets, or vice versa. They're anchoring the fleet and driving the fleet, while me as the main FC, I'm calling targets. Sometimes you have to do both, but we try to make it as easy as possible and as stress-free as possible, because after a little while, people start getting really antsy and really irritable with each other.
I understand the difference between the shot caller and the anchor. I don't understand the difference between the shot caller and the FC.
I say shot caller.
Mhm.
What was the context?
You mentioned them in quick succession, one after the other, as distinct roles: FC, shot caller, and anchor.
I might have meant target caller.
Yeah. So target caller, yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the main things FC does is target calling. What is the distinction between FCing and target calling?
It really just comes down to, it's hard to answer that. So if you're doing a job, they're usually two fleets. Every fleet will have like 2 to 3 FCs, like actual real FCs. So they'll have 2 FCs that are actually running the fleet. For example, my friend No Megan, him and I work together all of the time. Sometimes I'll be like, I'm in the mood to anchor today. I really don't want to talk to people. So I will the fleet will be under me. I am the FC of the fleet, quote unquote, like officially. But I'm pretty quiet. I am just talking with the other command comms while he is target calling. And I am just focusing on anchoring. So you also have somebody else who, like, we usually have coordinators. The coordinator is the one where, like, I'll be doing whatever with fleet, focusing on anchoring and talking with my FC partner, and I'll yell at my coordinator and say, hey, tell Op 3 to shut the hell up. Hey, they're talking over global. Or, hey, tell them where this is going. And that person is the one who is responsible for talking over global. This is like perfect world scenario. Sometimes I have to do all of it, which really isn't bad.
Yeah, I think this is a scale thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
I
love it. I love the distinction, because I think too often because we aren't we're not a 7,000 ship fleet. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But I think too often we make all of that be one person's job, when, to the point earlier, there are people around who can take those things and then grow by it. But yeah, it's nice, without having to sort of live it, to hear like the distinction that there's an FC, but there's sort of 3 parts to it, right?
Yep. Like I said before, it's a team effort. Whether it's the F1 monkey, whether it's the Logi pilot, whether it's my fast tackle newbie who this is his first day in nullsec, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and he's really excited to go tackle that marauder that he has no idea is going to get blapped by. It's all a team effort. So that's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I think people get really caught up in like the specifics of titles and directors and all that stuff, when I personally hate that. I'm trying to figure out how to say this without. If you've noticed, I've always like had to like stop myself to think about what I was saying, and the reason I had to do that is because I just see myself as a normal dude. Like, whether I'm an FC or not, like, my fleet knows that if they're joining my fleet, that they're not going to have some super egotistical FC, which there are plenty of in this game. I'm not here to be space famous. I'm here to have fun in internet spaceships with people that I love. That's pretty much it, what it comes down to. So, like, even with this, I was very, very taken aback. And again, I'm very honored to have a conversation with you guys, because Eve Uni has been an important part of New Eden for a very long time. And 2.5 years ago, when I started playing this game again, losing Asteros and Stratios, I never thought I'd be here having a conversation with this. So, like, yeah, it's a scale thing, but, like, I think people get too caught up in the specifics of everything, as opposed to taking a step back, breathing, and realizing that it is a game and you have friends that you can rely on. Let yourself rely on those. Try not to be too super, like, stubborn and, I guess, control freakish. And I don't mean to say that in like a negative manner, but rely on your friends. Like, you'll see more growth and you'll have a better team, as opposed to just good FCs. You can have good FCs that will do everything themselves, but if you have a good team, like Horde has this problem where they'll take one guy and they'll do everything. There's been plenty of times that I've absolutely destroyed a Horde fleet not just one fleet, but two fleets with one 250-man fleet, just because their ego got in the way. And that's not to say that any of you guys have that problem. I just think, like, the main point is work as a team, grow as a team, succeed as a team, fail as a team, talk as a team. And we can call back to the AARs, right? You know, if I make a mistake, some other FC calls it out and says, hey, why'd you do this? I'm going to explain it, why I did it, and we can sit down and have a conversation. Sometimes it turns into a 3-4 hour long conversation about PIFA, and then it turns into another 2-hour conversation about some random TV show we've both been watching. And then we find out that we play another game together. And then we'll be like, hey, you free next Saturday? So, like, Goonswarm is, while it is an alliance, like, I'm sorry, this might be kind of going off topic. There's a point to me saying this. Being a goon isn't necessarily about being a nullsec. Being a goon is about being a goon. Like, the history, the tradition, and the community. I mean, like, we have KarmaFleet. So Merkel Chen, and Nominate, and a few other people are actually here. I'm in the Ohio area. I can literally drive down to my CEO's house, he's 20 minutes away from me, and go have a beer with him. Like, he'll always be down for that. He's an awesome guy. But it's camaraderie. So at the end of the day, I never want my FC operations to interfere with the heart of KarmaFleet and Goonswarm as a whole, which is my friends.
On a more nitty-gritty level, for your talking about the difference of anchor and target calling stuff, would you say it's still generally regardless of the other role, the FC's job to order scatter and judge okay, no, we are losing this fight, we need to get out, and those sort of more higher level calls?
42. It depends on the situation. I mean, there's been plenty of times that I knew that I was going to lose my fleet, but higher command said, no, lose your fleet. And we have already contracted a monitor over to you. Get back in, get this other ping out, we'll get you repinged. And they're strategic whelps. So there's been plenty of times that I've had to take 100-man flycatcher fleet and ram it straight down the face of the enemy hack fleet with bubbles and wobbles. I knew I was losing my fleet. It sucks telling my guys, hey, sorry, but we're being sacrificed here. But sometimes that has to happen. As far as your specific question of who should call it, it just all depends on the situation. This is hard for me to say. So there are some people that I am okay with telling no. Find something else to do with your time. And then there are people that I will absolutely not tell no. Does that make sense?
I guess I mean more if it's you talk about say you're on a roam, or I know, but I'm not sure what the whole organization is, but if you're the person fully in charge of the operation, mainline FC, I think is what you called it.
Yeah.
In that case, would it be that person that gets to make the call? We are losing, pack it in, everyone, let's go home, or is I guess is that a role that whoever is the main FC does, or is that a designated thing too?
If it's large strategic operations, like X-47, for example, when we were shooting those 3 Keep Stars, it absolutely would not be whoever was the mainline FC. It would actually be a combination between our coalition leader, our alliance leader, Asher, and our military directors. Not a single FC will leave that fight until they are allowed to. So, in very large-scale operations, usually no. But if it's hey, I'm taking this fleet out to go shoot this random Astra house in the middle of nowhere, there's 2 other fleets that are joining me, one from Dracarys and one from some other initiative, we'll say, for example. If it's my operation, it's my operation. I'll be like, hey, let's just call it, guys. Like, we're not going to fight this. This is stupid. So it all depends on the scale.
Can I just interject with a quick time check? This is really useful, Joe. Thanks so much for this, and I'm sure we've got hours more questions that we can ask you. But I'm conscious we've been going for just over an hour and a half, and obviously don't want to keep everyone here for too long. So can I perhaps ask people to sort of formulate their kind of final questions, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that works for me. I also have no problem. I think maybe Sunday I have time. So if we wanted to do this again, I have no problem coming back and talking.
That'd be awesome. Thanks so much.
I don't have a final question, but I'd just like to say thanks for coming. Yeah.
FC, can I bring my Drake?
Never not.
I want to echo this. Thank you so much for coming. You've given us a lot to think about. But this is incredibly helpful. It's great to hear more perspectives on some of this stuff.
It's also wonderful to hear the, I'm not here to be internet famous. I'm just here to blow up spaceships.
That's what it's all about, dude. And again, I seriously want you guys to understand, it is an absolute honor to come here and talk to you guys. I know I might be in contact with a few other people, so you might actually see me in game with a fleet myself in the future. I got thumbs up on certain things. So if you guys do get bullied again, there may be a chance for me to come help out.
Nice.
But again, seriously, you guys, I had a blast. This was awesome. You guys all had awesome questions. I was super nervous to begin with. I had no idea what I was getting into.
Can I actually ask an actual final question?
Sure.
It's, by the way, Azuri, it's very nice to be talking to you instead of shooting at you for a change.
It always is.
Yeah. Do you have in your fleets people dedicated to talking with new people, right? You have 500,000 billion goons, right, in a strat-up. 10%, 15% will have no idea what they're doing, right? Presumably you want to make the fleet fun for them and utilize them to some degree, right? Do you have dedicated roles for that? As in roles of people whose role is to take them through the basics, answer the questions, clarify FC's orders, yada yada?
No, I do not. And the reason I don't, again, being an FC, you are a name. People know when they join my fleets that I'm relatively cool, relatively calm. I'm not going to tell you to STFU. I will never tell my fleets that. I've only done so once in the hundreds of fleets that I've done. And the reason I don't is because I do that. I take a lot of pride in that as both an instructor in KarmaFleet University, both as, a member of KarmaFleet whose main initiative of KarmaFleet was to bring in new players. And goons have throughout all of history have all about been new players and crappy ships. So I have always taken it to heart to ensure that, hey, welcome to the fleet, guys. If you guys have any questions, please feel free. If you don't want to ask in fleet, you can go ahead and shoot me a PM. You can find me on Discord. Go ahead and shoot me a Discord. I may not necessarily be able to get to it in time, but if you have questions, please ask me. I will answer them in time. If not, so-and-so here in command with me can answer it for you if I'm too busy. That's one of the main things that I do every single fleet.
Okay, so you don't have an alternative to the newbie initiative that HOR has, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Equivalent, rather, alternative.
Anything else before we wrap it up?
Well, I think what Gideon was asking was a little bit, something that kind of got lost there. I guess the question was, how does KarmaFleet do they have a program or something for someone to explain to new players on fleets, or is it just you and like up to the FC individually?
So we actually have our own university within Goonswarm. It's called Gooniversity. We actually have a director who holds classes. Like I can pull it. Yeah, so we have Introduction to Tackle and Purchase, Faction Warfare, Interdictors, Combat Realm. Like we actually have like a whole organization within Goonswarm that is dedicated to teaching classes. They'll pull like FCs and stuff like that. Like I've been able to do bombers from time to time. But as far as like in an actual fleet, no, it's generally just the FC. Goonswarm has all been about personal initiative. Like that's just how we do things. If you want to learn. KarmaFleet specifically has the standing fleet. We have a channel just like this in Mumble where it's always like 20 to 70 people sitting in comms together, hunting around the pocket, intel, mining, talking to each other, or just like watching movies from time to time. Like I know people will get into their own separate Discords. I know I personally have had a few people be like, hey, go ahead, join this Discord if you want to go. I'm going to stream, Mystery Science Theater 3000. Go do some co-ops if you want to do that. So. It's all at the heart of it all. Like it's all about community, and we have always made. I realize I didn't really necessarily answer your question to the full extent. At the heart of it all, like the community is what builds everything. Like Goonswarm has always been. It takes a village to some extent. It takes a village to raise a kid. So we always are always there to ask questions. You can ask it to anyone, and people will generally answer. We have people ranging from, I'm also new and I have no idea what I'm doing, to, dude, I've been playing this game since, it launched. So we have some extremely bitter vets that will give you an extremely bitter vet answer. We have some people that are a little bit more tactful and will give a nicer answer. And then you have some people that are just realists. But everyone has some sort of contribution